Namaste, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, because some of our friends had joined from different countries. Thank you very much for joining us today, and welcome to this policy dialogue initiative by Shan, Saaf Hawa or Nagrik initiative under the patronage of US Embassy Public Affairs Office. Shan is a very unique 2 years exercise where, under the support of US Embassy, Lung Care Foundation is focusing on creating and enhancing awareness in Delhi NCR region, and we have been able to work very effectively with school and college students, RWAs, communities. We've been having plenty of policy dialogue initiatives. We have conducted researches and also, of course, published widely in the media. This event was supposed to be held in person today, but then man proposes and man itself disposes. It is our own creation which we are facing as of today. And of course, we are going through very tough times. I'm sure all of the people, participants, are keeping yourself safe and healthy during these times. Enhancing public private partnership to mitigate air pollution. Let's look at how air pollution troubles India. Having 35 out of 50 most polluted cities in the world does not surprise us at all in India. And this is not a happy sign. And if we really look in terms of how air pollution is creating the bad impact on our economy, we'll be really surprised. In fact, in a recent study by Clean Air Fund, along with Dalberg and CII, it has been found that 95 billion USD were lost, estimated to be lost in 2019 due to air pollution in vis-a-vis our business. This is approximately 50% of our allocation to manage COVID problems as of today. Because of air pollution, 1.3 billion workdays over a span of 1 year has been lost. Because of air pollution, the job productivity has decreased the business revenue by up to 24 billion USD. The impact of air pollution goes beyond reducing the productivity and lifespan of assets also. If you really look at
हेलो
the impact of
लाइट नहीं है
on
जो ना वो
the
तो फोन करते हैं आप
solar power, it brings it down by 12%, and therefore 67% advantage is lost. Even in the retail business, if the pollutions are high, people visit less to the marketplaces. That brings in a loss of around 22 billion USD. And we are still ignorant about it. The tourism sector loses roughly around 2 billion USD. And of course, 820,000 people, their jobs get affected. So today we shall be discussing what needs to be done vis-a-vis possibilities, vis-a-vis trust issues of public-private partnership, vis-a-vis the coordination issues itself. And we have very learned panel members who will be speaking on that. So the lesser I should speak, the better it is. We did a poll. We asked general public, how do they look at PPP vis-a-vis mitigation of air pollution? And let me share very quickly in 2 minutes time some data which they are talking about. In fact, in terms of number of responses, we had 52% men and 48% ladies. And if we look at the data, Siddharth, move to the next slide. They were of different age groups, but predominantly 35% were from 41 to 60 years of age, and between 25 and 40 were 32%. Had younger population also, and 80% of the people live in Delhi and NCR. Siddharth. But everyone agreed, 97% of them agreed that air pollution is one of the most critical areas for public-private partnership, which means there is an almost 100% consensus that this is an area we need to talk about. And this will come as a major assurance to all our speakers because the sample testing of Delhi NCR people say, yes, PPP is very, very critical. Siddharth. But then I found this as a shocker. We have a national clean air program, and 40% of the people do not know anything about it. They're not even heard about it. And this itself is a clearing example in terms of the visibility of public-private partnership and in terms of how we can carry it through in times to come. Siddharth. And of course, when we asked them in terms of which are the top areas we should focus on, and we gave them a variety of options, people said we need to work on all the areas, which means all the areas are pain points for general public. They are not picking and choosing. They are saying, yes, if we need to work, let's work on all the areas. And that puts pressure on all of us vis-a-vis when to start, where to start, how to start, and how fast do we actually sustain and maintain our speed. Siddharth. We also ask people whether they have a personal responsibility, and we gave them various options. And we were again surprised that almost 60% said they have responsibility towards every aspect which is polluting the environment. So people by and large who responded are aware that they have an important role to play. Siddharth. And of course, the last question we asked them was, do you think for long-term impact on air pollution, PPP will play a major role? And 89% people said yes. So this data itself will come as a major assertion vis-a-vis what our panelists are going to be talking about. But then when we look at our discussions amongst the panel, we need to actually think in terms of few important questions. These questions could be, what is the nature and scope of PPP that is critical for mitigating air pollution? Why is it critical now? Why have we not done enough to mitigate air pollution? Who all play the critical role? Which are the emphasis areas in PPP? Infrastructure, health, correlation, correction at the source, awareness and commitment creation, enablement. What else? When do we get on the higher bandwagon of accelerated impact and success? How do we accomplish all this? How do we monitor progress? Are there any do's and don'ts vis-a-vis PPP? What are the lessons from US and Indian experience? How should the common man look at PPP to improve his or her life in general as a protection from air pollution? And finally, what kind of future scenario do we predict if things are good, not so good, or something in between? There are plenty of these questions, and I'm sure after my panelists would have spoken, I'll be inviting questions from the audience. And we have two tabs. One is the comment tab, another is the question Q&A tab. Kindly put your questions in the Q&A tab because I'll be looking at that consistently. Kindly do not put your questions in the chat box. It's an honor for me now to get the ball rolling and invite David Kennedy to come on the forum and speak. Mr. David Kennedy is a Minister Counselor for the Public Affairs at the US Embassy, New Delhi. Mr. Kennedy is a career member of Senior Foreign Services. He has served in a wide range of public diplomacy positions. He has served in Islamabad, Moscow, Geneva, Mazar-e-Sharif, and most recently, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. David has an AB from Harvard College in Russian History and Language, an MA in Russian and East European Studies from George Washington University, and an executive MBA from the Eisenberg School of Management from the University of Massachusetts. David, it's an honor to have you here. Kindly.
Thank you very much, Rajiv, and greetings to everybody. And thank you for setting the tone of today's important discussion on enhancing public-private partnership to mitigate air pollution. I thank you for recognizing. It would have been nice to have had you to in person, but in light of the situation, we're very honored to join virtually on this important discussion. So thank you. The Lung Care Foundation has been a valued partner of the U.S. mission in India in addressing issues of air quality, health, climate change, and its economic impact through in-person engagements, developing social media campaigns, and bringing together experts and professionals virtually to address critical aspects of air pollution and climate change. Today is also a pleasure to share this platform with Vaibhav Chaudhry from the Energy Institute of the University of Chicago and Professor Vinay Sawhney from Harvard University, two American universities that have been at the forefront of innovation, as well as Shikhar Jain from CII and Atul Goyal, President of the United Residents Joint Action Group. So thank you for joining us. But first, if you permit me, let me take a moment to address the world we are facing today. And on behalf of the U.S. Embassy and myself, to express my utmost respect and appreciation in light of our joint work with the Lung Care Foundation to all the healthcare workers and all the health workers in Delhi, India, and across the world. We are in the midst of a global pandemic and a truly awful spike in the number of COVID cases here in Delhi and across India. The role of the healthcare worker is undeniable, from the ambulance driver to the cleaning staff in a hospital, from the lab technician to the nurse to the doctor. Their role has been truly exceptional over the past year, and today, more important than ever. The Embassy is honored to partner with the Lung Care Foundation, which plays a leading role advocating for a healthier world on this truly important project of raising awareness. We're trying to raise awareness of and to act on air quality, to improve our lives and to address air quality that threatens our health. In that project, we are honored to work with one of India's leading pulmonologists, Dr. Arvind Kumar, who is a true leader and playing an important role in the response to the current pandemic as well. So thank you, Dr. Kumar. Thank you, Rajiv, and all at the Lung Care Foundation. And thank you to all the health workers on the front lines of the battle to save lives and to protect us all. Now, 2 days from now, on April 22, the United States will observe the 51st anniversary of Earth Day. An estimated 1 billion people around the world mobilize for action on Earth Day each year. And I'm glad that today we in India are part of this larger global movement. In his inaugural address, President Biden said, and I quote, "We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again, not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's. We will lead not merely by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. We will be a strong and trusted partner for peace, progress, and security." Now, the United States and India have been partners and collaborators for decades in a range of areas, from defense collaboration to science and technology and economic development, and education and research, and many, many areas. Most recently, health has been on the forefront of our cooperation. Today, our two great countries are working together to address the challenges of climate change. The recent visit by Special Envoy John Kerry underlined our interest in working with India to achieve our mutual goals. As one of the world's largest economies and a global leader in science and innovation, India is a critical part of the solution to the climate crisis. Climate change also includes air pollution, a large and growing global threat to human health with significant economic consequences, as Rajiv has already highlighted. Nearly 7 million people die each year, about 10% of the worldwide deaths because of air pollution. Since the landmark U.S. Clean Air Act was enacted in 1970, aggregate U.S. emissions of the 6 most common pollutants have dropped by an average of 70% by 2015, while our GDP grew by 246%. The mammoth task of mitigating air pollution is not possible without robust private-public partnerships, harnessing the experience and expertise of both the public and private enterprise. Given the magnitude of the challenge, the United States government's efforts to combat pollution aims to harness Indian private sector, philanthropic, and corporate social responsibility resources. Governments cannot do it alone. Although the private sector is beginning to respond to investment opportunities related to pollution, mitigation, and exposure reduction, and even greater investment potential remains. Strong partnerships across government, the private sector, and civil society will be needed for any meaningful long-term impact at scale. Some of the best examples of successful public-private partnerships include the state university system of the United States established in the last century. And even today, the Biden administration's $1.5 trillion transition to renewable energy is built on the foundation of public-private partnerships. The United States is also working with partners to address health issues caused by poor air quality. Air pollution in India today is putting increased pressure on India's health services, its infrastructure, compromising an already challenged workforce, undermining economic productivity, and further marginalizing those who do not have the means to mitigate the effects of this worsening problem. Public-private partnerships are and will be critical to help reduce that burden. We have seen how the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, worked with partners in the semiconductor industry in the 1990s to clean up the industry and increase profits. And we believe that similar collaborations are possible here in India today as well. I look forward to the conversation today, to hearing from our distinguished panelists, to hear the comments from those who have joined us, and to learn about some of the exciting work that you, my fellow panelists, are doing in this area. So thank you again, Rajiv, the entire Lung Care Foundation for your tireless work, all the panelists who have joined this virtual Thinkathon today, and most of all, the virtual audience of civil society leaders, members of the private sector, academia, environmental experts, who will be the implementers of many of the solutions we discussed today. Thank you all, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, David. In such a short time, you spoke about Britain government's commitment, talking about climate change and air pollution being two sides of the same coin, talking about the need for robust PPP and the need for a stronger partnership, and also highlighting examples of PPP from the US perspective. We are indeed very grateful to you for setting the ball rolling. And of course, we are very, very thankful to you and the entire team at US Embassy for all your support to make this virtual Thinkathon a possibility. We are grateful to you. Moving on further, it's a pleasure for me to invite Vaibhav Chaudhary. Vaibhav Chaudhary heads the Strategy, Operations, and Business Development for Energy Policy Institute of the University of Chicago, EPIC. Prior to this, Weber was the National Energy Advisor to the Government of the United Kingdom. Weber is an executive management professional from Booth School of Business, University of Chicago, and an MBA in Power Management from National Power Training Institute, Government of India. Over to Weber, please.
Thank you, Rajiv ji. Let me pull up my slides quickly. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so at the outset, I would like to thank both the Lung Care Foundation as well as the US Embassy for inviting us to this panel. And what I'll try to do in the next 5-ish minutes is to basically quickly sort of set the context in terms of why we are here today and what are some of the initiatives that's been tried and tested in the past around PPP for air pollution mitigation or on the energy side or on the climate side, for example, and what more could possibly be done, which could segue into some of the brainstorming discussions that I was so eager to have at this panel today. So very quickly, for those who don't know us, I represent the Energy Policy Institute at the University of Chicago. We have an office in India. We are headquartered in New Delhi, Connaught Place. We typically run empirical research studies / work experiment in both the areas of energy as well as environment. And we have ongoing programs in around 9 to 10 states in India as we speak. We typically partner with government institute, both at the central as well as state level, and air pollution is one of our bigger sort of larger programs. And we also been like a beneficiary of the USAID in running some of those air pollution work in India over the last 4 or 5 years. Now, moving on to the meat of it. So why is PPP important? Now, I think there are two thoughts that immediately come to anybody's mind. One is that any of these, public policy has implications on a private individual or a private organization. Hence, their views matters a lot. Now, secondly, and equally important, that policymakers could tend to write really good policies at times, but they face a lot of challenges when it comes to enforcement, when it comes to implementation of those good policies. So had there been like a better or more cohesive sort of a partnership between the CSOs or the individuals or the private organizations, some of these issues could possibly be reduced or kind of mitigated. Hence, this PPP in today's world plays a real vital role in sectors across, including air pollution. Now, what are some of these tried and tested, I would say, engagements or interventions that has been there, I think, in the Indian context? I've just tried to put in like a few examples. Now, technology had played a significant role in terms of bridging this gap a little bit. For example, there is a Green Delhi app, which the Delhi government launched, I think, a little more than a year ago, to basically connect with a last mile user to report or take some feedback on the policy actions. Similarly, there was this initiative which the erstwhile Niti Aayog, the Planning Commission, did on the larger energy and environment pathways calculator, which they call it as the IESS 2047, wherein they try to facilitate informed debate and discussion at various levels on the larger environment and climate change issues by taking in views from the public at large, the CSOs, the think tanks, and sort of different set of key stakeholders. From the University of Chicago side, we've also done a couple of interventions on the technology front, one of which is like very well known in India as well, is called the Air Quality Life Index. This is a tool which we talk about, and there's a Hindi version as well, which kind of links to your rising number of pollution levels vis-a-vis the impact on human health across different geographies in the world, including in the Indian context. I've just shared a picture of the AQLI on the right side. Now, after technology, there are other sort of citizen engagement campaigns that's also been tried to improve upon this partnership or glue in more this partnership between the public and the private sector. And there has been campaigns which was launched in Delhi itself, something like, there was this one campaign called the Yudh Pradushan Ke Viruddh, which the Chief Minister launched some time ago, basically to have citizens more and more engaged with what the government is looking at rolling out by taking their feedback on ground. Lastly, there are other sort of policy platforms, which can inform policy decision or policy action, some of which have been structured by the government itself in the form of EPCA or CAQM, which is like the new form of EPCA. The mandate of these platforms also is to sort of engage with the civil society, take the views of the general public, so that the policies is more informed and rigorously sort of evaluated even before rolling out. Now, in the last bit of my slide, I just want to quickly throw open some of these ideas which I feel could further catalyze the PPP for especially pollution mitigation in the Indian context or in the Delhi NCR context where it's highly integrated. Now, there could be so many ways to do it, but to paucity of time, let me just quickly talk about 2-3 of it. Now, like the core issue, one of the core issue which we are facing as an individual here living in India is that there is a dearth of good quality data around pollution. There is a very low information available on air pollution. And even if this information is available, it is not, I would say, rightly sort of conceivable form for the general public. Hence, there is a larger need, I would say, for a transparent, high quality, reliable data or the information to be made available to the general public, to the media, to organizations, private institute, but more so, I believe there is a role of the civil society, to think tanks or media more generally, to digest this information, to convert it in a form of a more connectable and conceivable kind of an information, maybe linking it to the health impacts, like the way Lung Care Foundation is rightly doing and a couple of other groups are doing. So I think that also plays a major role, and this could potentially further catalyze the PPP partnership module or model for pollution mitigation in the Indian context. Lastly, I would also like to say that there is a need to incubate some of these knowledge centers, or you might want to call it like a program facility or program management unit within the PCBs or the energy departments or the relevant line departments in the government, which could facilitate these discussions and have sort of more informed policy choices that could be rolled out by taking views from the general public, rather taking views from the private organization, from the associations like CII and 50 more generally. I would like to just park my thought here, and I'll be happy to take questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Weber. In a very short time, you've been in a position to highlight the need for information, the quality information, the need for its right usage, and of course, the need for creating the right impact. Otherwise, all our discussions would confine ourselves to the various think tanks which float around. And what we need to do is a transformation from think tank to action oceans. And if action oceans happen, only then public at large will benefit from. Thank you so much, Vaibhav. Let me now move to our next honored speaker, Professor Vinay Sahni. Professor Sahni has more than 3 decades of experience in executive and financial services. He has launched 3 startups during his working careers in India, the US, and the Middle East. Currently, Professor Sahni is a key member of Faculty of Arts and Science at Harvard University. Professor Sahni is frequently invited as a keynote speaker in various countries, and he has also worked very closely with Niti Aayog. May I request Professor Sahni to enrich us with his experience and penetrative thoughts, please. Professor Sahni, please.
Thank you, Rajiv. I must excuse for not being so audible today, given that I suppose I have some issues, health issues. But anyway, not to worry. Let me give you a quick background on what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to actually walk you through the actual mechanics of building a PPP transaction, because I'm a finance professor, and one of the subjects that I teach at Harvard is project finance, and PPP takes up a big chunk of that. So it's nice to talk about PPP, but what are the critical issues that one faces in actually putting the deal together is what we're going to focus on. So we're going to talk about sort of contractual structures, and we're going to talk about returns, and we're going to talk about stakeholders, and we're going to talk about bottlenecks and risks associated with this exercise, so that before we sort of jump into this very ambitious plan, we should be able to figure out where are we headed vis-a-vis pollution. So going back to pollution, I spent 3 months with Niti Aayog back in March, April, May of 2019. I put together a very short, crisp PowerPoint, which Haraji will be happy to share with you. And it was also accompanied by a 72-page report, which basically addressed the interventions that we need to execute in the state of Delhi to actually get rid of this problem. So I was very, Amitabh Kant was kind enough to give me an office next to his, and he made available all the resources. And I must compliment him for the kind of leadership that he displayed in making sure that I was able to put together a document that would address it from a different point of view, and that is exactly what I did. And in the course of that exercise, I identified two major areas where I think we haven't been able to make much progress. And the two problem areas that I identified were funding and execution. So I put together a plan of how to fund these interventions. He asked me, what do you think is the tab for this? And I told him a round figure of $1 billion. And then he, of course, was quite surprised, because he said, "But that's not even the budget for all India for interventions for I don't know, 28 states and so on and so forth." But anyway, I also put together a plan for funding this effort, and I suggested to him that we should follow the Harvard University model, and we should create an endowment fund. And I said Niti Aayog or the Ministry of Finance should actually seed this endowment fund at $100 million level, and I volunteered to assemble the remaining $900 million myself. And I said, if you can do that, we will be able to put together, a vehicle that will address, because it's not just a money problem. After having spent 3 months in Niti Aayog, I figured out that apart from money, execution is a big issue. The way the government works, and the departments, and the turf wars, and the delays, and so on and so forth. So what I suggested was that under Section 8 of the Companies Act, a special vehicle should be created along the lines of Metro, and it should be managed and run exactly like the way Metro is run, independently, and with no interference from the government. And as I said, I'd be very happy to share that presentation with you. And I don't want to get into the details of what and how it was going to work, but the PowerPoint is very comprehensive, and it addresses all the issues. Let's talk about some of the interventions that I recommended very quickly, and they go as they were as follows. So the focus areas were dust from roads, soil construction, biomass, municipal solid waste, transportation, and power plant revamp. So these were the 5 categories, and each of these 5 categories had specific interventions. For instance, dust from roads, soil construction. There were all kinds of suggestions given, how many road rollers, how many sprinklers, and so on and so forth. And for transportation, I figured we would probably need 6,000 electric buses. So to cut the story short, to put together a PPP model to address the interventions for pollution is not an easy task. And that's largely on account of the fact that PPP models are complex. They come with strings attached. The biggest problem that we've seen in India is a lack of knowledge and understanding of the asset acceptance criteria that they need to draw to attract investors. For instance, if you want to set up a waste to energy plant and it's going to cost $100 million, and if you are going to, in your tender document, stipulate a return of 6%, not many contenders will apply. And that's why so many of these tenders fail. And so similarly, I think it's the risk-reward equation that has been a stumbling block to put together a successful PPP model in most of the states, and also the documentation, and also the way the implementation agreement is drawn up. The implementation agreement basically is an exercise where both the state and the awardee of the contract, the partner, the Indian, the private party, their roles are defined, and you figure out who's going to deliver what. So if the government is supposed to deliver land, you stipulate, a deadline, and you say, okay, in such and such period, land will be delivered, and all the other clearances will be delivered. And what we have found from research is that most of the states fail in executing their piece, and that leads to failed transactions. So the point that I'm really trying to make here is that while we can talk about PPP to address, the interventions, and let me give you an example. I identified that we probably have close to about 300 power plants in this country that need to be revamped. They are throwing off more carbon dioxide in the air than you and I can dream of, and they need to be fixed. Each power plant requires an investment of between $80 to $150 million, depending on the size of the project. And that item has remained unattended for multiple years, and it's probably remain unattended for the next 10 years because nobody's really paying any attention. And these are all old coal-fired power plants that were set up with Russian technology. So the point I'm trying to make is that those are some of the items that the PPP model can address, but we have to have smart guys on the other side, on both sides of the table, to put together asset acceptance norms that are going to be acceptable to the investors and the developers to be enthused to bid for these deals. Similarly, we could have 6,000 electric buses, which is going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and we could have those. But if we are not going to be generous in indicating the rate of return for people who are going to fund those electric buses, then you'll have to fund them yourself. So we've had this situation not only here in India, but we also had a problem. We've also had problem in the US. We've been trying to build a rail link between Los Angeles and San Francisco for the last 20 years, okay, on a PPP model, and we failed. So this is not just India, but also the US. But let me tell you the success story. The success story is that during Obama's days, Elon Musk basically went to Obama and asked him to fund his battery plant. Obama was smart enough to write him a check for $400 million, and his battery plant came up. And Elon Musk, who not only put together a battery plant, but put together probably one of the most successful car ventures in the world, who I think about a year and a half ago, his market capitalization was in the range of about $30 to $40 million, and his shares were languishing at about $150 per scrip. And right now, Elon Musk's Tesla car company has a market capitalization of $700 billion in a matter of 14 months. And that is the magic. That's the magic of PPP. That's the magic of Obama. People have forgotten about it. The Republicans went after Obama, with a hammer and tong and said, hey, listen, why the hell did you write this check of $400 million to Elon Musk? Elon Musk actually repaid that loan ahead of time. So the point I'm really making is that not only we were in the United States we were able to create a successful model, but we were also able to create a world-class company, which the world is envious of. Everybody and his brother wants now Elon Musk to set up a car factory in his country, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of scope and there's a lot of stuff that can happen, but we need to, I think, educate our regulators. We need to educate also, I think, our public. I think that the platform that we have under Rajiv's leadership in collaboration with the American Embassy, I think can be utilized to spread the message. I think we could do a damn good job in actually coming up with a message that how important it is, to address this issue of pollution, and what does it take to actually create a PPP partnership type of an arrangement. So, since I actually run a 3-hour class on PPP at Harvard, I could just go on for 3 more hours, but I don't intend to do that. So I hope I'll be quite happy to answer any questions that'll be, raised during the later part of the conversation. And I suppose I'll, pass on the mic to the next speaker, please.
Thank you so much, Professor Vinay Sahni. I wish we had the luxury of enough time. We would have loved to listen to you for the next 3 hours or 30 hours also, because there's so much to draw from your experience and learning, which can be applied sure and certain. You've talked a lot about the need for endowment fund in India. You've talked about how internationally countries are facing this kind of a situation. You have highlighted examples of how the government can trust a private entity and create a major unicorn, a major organization, which can now be the, the area of interest for most of the countries across. But at the same time, you have also looked at how do we need to identify the problems and solve the problems, and before we actually think in terms of identifying the opportunities and working towards the opportunity. And of course, your word of caution is very important, that the need for having the right talent on both the sides is absolutely critical. And thank you very much for also highlighting that there is a need for education, both for the regulators as well as for the public, if we have to create the right blend between the public and private entities. Thanks a lot, Professor Sani.
I would
Really
also
grateful.
encourage everyone to actually gain access to that PowerPoint
I
presentation
will be
on
sending that
production so that each
presentation
one of the
to. Sure.
participants can actually view it. It'd be very beneficial.
So I'm taking the liberty of promising right away, Professor Sani, all those people who have registered and have attended, and we have their email IDs, immediately after this session, by tomorrow, of course, we will send your PowerPoint presentation and other PowerPoint presentations used during this program to them.
Thank you.
All right. So it's time now to invite the voice of the industry. I have an honor to invite Mr. Shikhar Jain from CII. Mr. Shikhar Jain has 25 years of experience as a business sustainability expert. Mr. Jain has developed, implemented, and integrated various EHS best practices, enhanced compliances, and risk management framework for several Indian and global firms. Mr. Jain had been lead trainer and faculty for various accredited training courses for various organizations and has conducted over 500 training sessions, helping around 15,000 professionals. Over to Mr. Jain, please.
Thank you, Rajiv ji, and it's an honor that we are doing this very important webinar today on a very important topic. And as I've been hearing praise from you about my introduction, so as a passionate young environmental engineer, when I entered into this complete field of environmental pollution and all. And I was told one story by my boss at that time that, and that's a global truth also, that in 1960s in India, when you see a stack from a distance, the father used to say to the son that don't see the color of the emissions that are coming out, and don't smell it, because stack itself is the indicator of an economic development. So if a stack is there in a district in India, means it's an industrialized city, there will be more employment. And at that time, India was more struggling with the social fabric and things like that. And many PSUs, and what Professor Sahani mentioned about the thermal power plants, and some outdated technology entered into the country, because our industrial development was based on more on the socialism model of creating more employment. And fast track 60 years down the line, year 2000, 2020, assumingly when the same father with the son, with the new generation goes on and sees the stack and the smell and the color of the emissions coming in, it is seen as that this is the worst place to live in. And I think that's how the mental perception has been changed. And then as a stakeholder part in India, we had a very strong movement of public interest litigations that came in, which became quite challenging for the industries to run, because the 1960 model of socialism versus the industrialization model of 2020 with best of the technology was all perceived as same. And I think that's what Mr. Vaibhav has also been saying, that there is a lot of awareness that has to be created with the stakeholders, that there are two types of company, not all could be seen in one go, that all of them are polluting and all. So there are companies which have improved their environmental consciousness, and I think fast tracking it to 2017 onwards, wherein we are seeing a lot of ESG funds which are coming into India, the environment, social and governance funds. They have been a indicator of bringing in an indirect change into the economy because of the capital allocation, wherein purposely they want to invest in the assets which are green, invest in the strategies which looks into stakeholders, the community at large. And I think that is by force teaching the industry from the point of view of governance to improve their practices around right at the design stage, rather than creating a problem and then looking for a solution for that. So I think there are changes which are happening in the ecosystem, but I think we cannot have one scale to measure all. There are industries at various level, and also understand that India has a huge legacy problem with the PSUs, wherein there is a certain mindset in which we have to see how do we solve the problem. But coming from the CII perspective, I think a very apt issue of air pollution was taken up by us in around 2017, 2018. The reason for CII getting involved into this PPP dialogue, I will not say that CII per se is doing any investment, because CII is a industrial association, but a major stakeholder to bring all the players on board and discuss and take it to the government and take it to the funding agencies to set up these pilot projects in place, wherein then we can showcase it to a larger audience that how the PPP model can work and how feasible is this type of models. So one success that we got was in the state of Punjab. The reason for which was that the poor air quality in India, which was happening on year basis right from 2015, it started getting observed that during the winters in Delhi or the NCR region that we call National Capital Region, comprising of 16 districts, there is a very poor air quality, and the doubt always triggered was that it is due to the industry. And if not industry, then many multinational CEOs which were coming to Delhi because of all regions for meeting the government and all, they also felt that something should be done. I mean, we cannot sit and think that why the country or the city is facing such a thing. And it brings a lot of shame to the country when we say that we have 8 or 10 most polluted cities in India. We will never like to be called for that part, wherein if we go into the mythology where we sort of have air and water as one of the things that we pray for, how we can live in a bad air quality. So with all this as a background, CII along with Niti Aayog and with some funding from the US based charities, we institutionalized the study to understand what are the sources of pollution. And I think Niti Aayog set up those 4 committees under transportation, for agriculture, for fuel quality, and for the construction companies. And I think that was what I think Professor Sahani also mentioned, that Mr. Ravi Kant, Mr. Amitabh Kant was very apt to bring in all the stakeholders on board. Now, this is a one-off example. In India, the leadership counts a lot. So this PPP model, why it worked was because Niti Aayog took the leadership, brought in all the ministries, everybody came in, the chief secretary was there, and all the players were there, and we could identify the 4 sources which are important for the poor air quality in Delhi. Was not only the construction industry or the vehicular pollution or the DG sets or the internal combustion engines, but also it was traveling by far from Haryana and Punjab, where they had this problem of stub burning or the crop residue burning that they were doing. And because there was a time of 15-20 days in which they have the next fields to be ready for the next crop, rather than shifting it or means digging it out, it was better to just burn the farms and leave it like that. And so CII initiated this study along with the implementation part. We thought that we need to showcase it. So the CII Foundation, which is there, came into action. It started working locally with the farmers in Haryana and Punjab. And then this was supported by the CEO forum that we initiated within CII, which is called as the CEO Forum for Clean Air, Better Life, which started with 17 CEOs, but today we have 50 CEOs coming in and pledging from their individual CSR funds into a corpus and trying to create some PPP model, not at the large scale what Professor Sahni mentioned, because those models needs a transformational thing, which requires a lot of funding. So what CII is doing in its own capability is doing the pilot projects, showcasing it to the government, to the various stakeholders, and saying and giving it this knowledge to anybody who can commercialize it, because we don't have those agenda to commercialize and solve this as a complete solution or a problem. In this Clean Air Better Life initiative, we started working with the farmers in Punjab. It started with a handful of, I should say, 2,000 or 3,000 farmers, but today our touch point is more than a lakh farmer. From 200 villages, we have now gone to 500 villages. And the impact has been so good that we could request the state government of Punjab, state government of Haryana, the central government to pull in, given some resources from the machinery point of view, and we could showcase those examples. So I think the problem was not that farmers were burning it, but if we are able to give them the low cost solutions, which are indigenized in solutions in India, if we are able to develop. And then we have a lot of startups which joined that, okay, these are the type of solutions that we can provide. So one major learning for CII also was that if the problem is understood well and all the stakeholders get involved in this along with the government, rather than shifting of buck and somebody takes a lead, we need a good anchor point to take a lead in India. And if we are able to showcase this example, then the farmers were ready to abide by it. And there was at least the days that got reduced from the poor air quality, which used to be 56, was reduced by at least 10 to 12 days. So I will not say the complete problem was solved, but still we had 45 days which still had a poor air quality, and 23 days have been the worst air quality which had been there. We also need a very understandable social media or the print media, because all the good initiatives that we do, if the air quality keeps on seeing bad, I think we have to make more positive news, although the steps might be very trivial at this time, but I think we need a lot of social media support also. And that's how the CII Foundation started bringing in these type of issues with our channel partners with CNBC and ET Now and all, just to create a positive thing. Because in India, anything that you do under PPP and trying to solve anything for public good has both a positive and a negative phase for it. But I think for industry to look forward as solution providers, we need a lot of positive publicity, because that will create a pro image. And I think looking at the success of NCR model, we got further funding for working in Indore, which is one of the smart cities. And under the smart city mission, I think consecutively for 4 or 5 years, it has been rated very high, which shows that the city CEO or the city guys have been quite proactively working on it. So when we went into Indore, we tried to understand that is Indore ready to adhere to any situation related to air pollution. So we were told that no, Indore does not have the air quality problems like Delhi. Now the learning over here is that what Rajiv ji you mentioned is that we have a national clean action plan which is running across, I think, 100, 200 cities which are there. So not all cities are at the same level of pollution like Delhi. But what we need to do is that we have to leapfrog and go to those smart cities which are performing good and prevent them from doing the same mistakes that the bigger cities of or the urbanized capitals like Delhi, Mumbai, Nasik and all have done, because there the problem solving will be very easy in PPP mode than the places where the situation has got bad to worse. So in Indore, we had some initial success again from the funding from some of the US charities, I should say. And we came out with a concept which I think what Vaibhav and Professor Sahni, because they have a good sort of the knowledge of the things that have worked and that have not worked. So we got a lot of research data from the California Research Lab or something like this. And we came to know that let's not concentrate only on Indore as a smart city region, but look after the metropolitan region of wider Indore, like NCR, we say in Delhi, and let's see that what could be the probable sources of pollution coming in over there. And when we track that, we realized that 200 kilometers away from Indore is a power plant which is there. And when the satellite imagery was showing all those red, orange, yellow type of spots, the interpretation of that obviously is not known to us. But then that's where the role of the Lung Care Foundation comes in. When they interpreted that, it sees that this is the city just waiting for the air pollutants from 200 kilometers travel over here and create it as a public health problem, and nobody will know that the source is 200 kilometer away. What do we do with this particular situation? So I think this is where the concept of airshed management came in. What I am trying to say over here is that the PPP mode does not only creates a collective wisdom, a collective knowledge, but it tries to generate some solutions also. But as Professor Sahani said, that solutions require a big investment. So from CII perspective, what we can say is that our role is more creating these pilots, because we have handful of charities that fund us. We have the CEO forum that supports us. So we create those platforms where we can show the pilots and good inputs that we were not looking, which came from from the Lung Care Foundation, was the health impacts of this, and which I also learned a lot, that public at large need to also understand that why a good air quality is very important for them. And I think it was good data that Lung Care Foundation also started analyzing, that how the air quality has the direct repercussions on the public health impacts. And I think that goes a long way into the planning of the smart cities, that when we are developing these smart cities, we are also looking people from the good health point of view, and health should be a very important indicator for the smart city. And I think that's where in Indore we realized it. We said to the smart city CEO, she proactively took all these initiatives as well. And they also started working on climate change, and they have got some credits that came their way. So I think where we are looking is that as CII, if we just from proper PPP, the proper stakeholders that we have, and we get the identification of the problem correctly, and then the solution comes in with the collective wisdom. And the last thing, the another pilot project we have just started is on the sustainable transportation, which is where we are looking that can we look at the impacts of bringing in the electrical vehicle, and how does that impacts on the air quality. And it's again a study based projects, because all these things requires a lot of data. Once we start generating that, we get some minds globally to help us on the scenarios that we can plan. And all this information that we get is a publicly available information. We take it to the government, because the government is where they are doing all the planning, and they are investing into future technologies, into future cities. And I think that's what the aspiration is, that we need a clean and green economy. So the way we proceed towards our GDP growth, because when we see all the GDP figures and the climate change debate, that 90% of the infrastructure or the development is still going to come into the country. So we need to see that while we grow economically, the development has to be a clean and a green economy. So I think we have the responsibility for the present generation and the next generation to come up as the startups, that if we can invest in the clean technologies through PPP mode, and it makes a good business sense, I think we have the green jobs and the green growth, which would be a next business mantra. and CII will be there supporting all these initiatives and collective minds
Thanks,
and the
Shekhar.
webinars like this. So with this, I pass it on back to you, Rajiv ji, and I have utilized my time for just letting you know what CII is working in this
Thank
space
you so
for.
much, Shekhar. Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me because there has been a major
Yeah,
power failure in our area. So I'm without
yeah,
I'm now operating from my phone. Can you hear me?
okay. Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
we are
sir.
hearing you.
Thank you so much, Shikhar. You've been very nice in terms of talking about a scenario starting with legacy mindset to modern day realities of CEOs working together. And of course, you've been also highlighting in terms of need for innovating low cost solutions, need for positive social need for anchor point to take on the leadership, and need to preserve good cities to become better cities. Very well said, Shikhar. Thank you so much. May I now have the honor of inviting Mr. Atul Goyal ji. Atul Goyal ji is amongst the founder members of Urja, United Residents Joint Action Group of Delhi, as well as its current president. It is the largest civil society initiative in Delhi. He is a social entrepreneur, a strategist, and a macro and micro planner. He initiated and pioneered the Delhi Clean Air Forum in 2016. He is an independent member nominated to the Honorable Supreme Court Municipal Solid Waste Management Committee 2018 to plan workable solutions to the city garbage. Atulji, you are an important speaker. You're coming at the end, but I'm sure you'll put across all the practical perspectives which general public goes through. Over to you, Atulji, please.
Thank you, Rajiv ji. Thank you very much, Siddharth. Next, this is an opportunity for to share the experience of Urja, which we work with the general public and the RWAs across the city on this platform, which is speaking of public-private partnership mitigation programs on air pollution. This is what we started in 2016, creating a mechanism in each zone of Delhi to network across different wards of Delhi and a coalition of power, local power structures and influencers. Siddharth, so this is what we begin with to operate, and to some extent we are able to push it forward and make an impact on the society and stakeholders together, and this is enable and empower the citizens to express their concerns and opinion while implementing solutions. Like say, everyone is aware of the solutions you want to do, but bringing them on one single platform and working for implementation of those solutions together is one goal the DCF is basically working on, and we to some extent we are able to do that during the last 5 years of our working. Next, Siddharth. Next. So now we have to our target is a clean air and a number of increased clean air days within our in a calendar year. So we are working on number of issues. I have listed here a few of them, like say zero tolerance on local waste burning, zero tolerance on toxic fireworks on all occasions, develop a plan, construction waste disposal with ongoing construction work in the area. This is a chapter, develop a plan, not only for one item, it is applicable on all issues, on all categories. We need to have a local area development plan for each issue, each category of issue. Monitor progress of SWM rules in reference to GRAP recommendations with local leaders and highlighting local monitoring and reporting. Polluting activities, sources to the concerned authorities. This is one major chapter. This may like say the app launched by the state government and the other apps launched by the central government and the municipalities are playing a major role, though we do have some private NGOs and private apps working and supporting this this process in public domain, reporting to the DPCC, reporting to the CPCB and other monitoring agencies. We are working on NCAP tracking system with our partners, Climate Trends, and from time to time interaction and advisories from health experts like Lung Care Foundation. We have been working towards in public domain, and rewards and recognition for achievers and inculcating sense of competitive neighborhoods. This is going on since last more than 6 years with Urja, and every 2 years we come and reward and recognize the people for their excellent work in public domain, and these are few things we have been doing. I've not listed so many things which are left out here on the screen. We came up with a green manifesto where the state government committed that they will be reducing and achieving 2/3, like say 65% pollution reduction by 2025. And we are in touch with the state government for an annual reduction of around 12% each year to achieve the target of 65% by the year 25. So these are few things, because 2020 we launched the Green Air Manifesto from the people's perspective of view, and with the raising our 10 demands in those Green Manifesto to all the political parties across the city during the election to the state. Next to that, and these are few things I'm sharing. I'm mentioning what we have been doing in Urja, what we have done, what we will be keeping on doing. But the today's topic is public-private partnership module. How a private sector contribute. So our thoughts and experience on how do we mitigate and how do we take it forward, and so that in a more constructive manner, so that we fetch more desired results and solutions on table. I've listed 6 items here, and the first is the nodal in charge, like say deputy commissioner responsible for implementation, would require support, expertise and guidance from various stakeholders. Therefore, besides government own expertise, private sector can bring along its own expertise and technology on board to support the government machinery to work parallelly along with those people, those who are responsible to deliver, to execute the policies and take it forward. Then community participation, citizen participation, or RWAs or MTS participation as a watchdog is very crucial here to oversee and fixing accountability and from implementers. This is very what you say is a subject where unless this community participation is there, and there are people to watch you around and see your movements and fix the accountability, things can't change. Things will not be able to change, because there is the moment that accountability comes in, the transparency is automatically, it becomes a part of it. So demonstration of key technologies is very crucial here, particularly from communities' perspective. There are so many latest technologies available around the world, and regular demonstration of those technologies to the better use of the society are definitely looked forward all the time by the experts and the communities and the citizen at large for their larger benefit. Now, introduction of key technology from government should have prior community experience in terms of adaptability before any government approval. Now, what we see, government comes up with a policy without a pilot or with a pilot, but there is no public participation over there. So there is a resistance in adopting those things. If there is a prior involvement of public and the citizens, then the more acceptability from the public will be enforced, and it will become smoother for the citizens and as well as the executing, implementing agencies to push it forward and for the larger, to achieve the larger goal. I'll just give you an example. Waste management is one such example. The other is parking policy in Delhi. Both are failure because the people, citizen participation by the authorities is not on board. And private players also have a crucial role in monitoring and reporting besides the community, and private players therefore needs to join hands. A tailor-made implementation plans may be made depending on the geography of the area, depending on the needs of that area, and on a decentralized module with a local area plans, and this can be taken up for achieving the larger goal. Communication is the key, and private players has an edge and can help in develop tools for better communication. So communication again plays a very important role and in capacity building of not only the experts, not only the masses, citizens, academia, even the bureaucrats and the executors. So communication is one of the best way to develop and integrate, and not only the communication, it should be on a round table, like say everyone sitting together exchanging views like we are doing today on the PPP model existence. So I'll say the narrative of PPP model should be changed to, like say, public private citizen partnership module, PPCP. There is a need to introduce C in between the P's, so that citizens become a part and parcel of the actual transmission and taking it forward. And so I'll suggest that we shall now for the particularly in the context of air pollution mitigation, unless there is a citizen participation, things won't change. Thank you.
Thank you, Atulji. Atulji, thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts in spite of not having good health these days. But we really appreciate your coming on the forum and sharing your thoughts, especially on thoughts like public-private citizen partnership, where you're also highlighting in terms of fixing accountability, transparency, and you're saying that communication is critical and the collective calibration of thought is very, very vital. Time's running out. I'm going to read out one very important communication that we received from Dr. Sen Gupta, which also brings in a different perspective, because this is not a forum where we are going to conclude everything. This is perhaps also highlighting the unfinished agenda we all have in front of us. And Dr. Sen Gupta says, it is not correct to conclude that 9 to 10 most polluted cities are in India. I feel that air quality measurements following all protocols through calibrations of analyzers are major issues which we are not addressed by SPCB. This leads to incorrect data. Dr. Sen Gupta is ex-member secretary CPCB. Dr. Sen Gupta, your point is very well noted, and I'm sure in times to come, you will play a critical role in this dialogue further, because this dialogue shall continue. This is not a moment when we are discussing PPP. I think what is important is this has to become from a moment to a movement. Time's out. We normally finish on time, and therefore at 5:15 we must close. So I've got 30 seconds only, and as part of my closing remarks, I must thank everyone involved in this discussion. Those who could not speak as part of the audience have a valuable role to play as part of the PPP movement in times to come. I want to express my sincere thanks to David, Carl, Anthony, Eugene, and Mandeep for their constant support throughout the program. I also want to thank our panelists, Professor Vinay Sani, Vaibhav Chaudhary, Shikhar Jain, Atul Goyalji, for taking out time from their schedules. And of course, my own team also for the backup support. Dr. Arvind, Abhishek, Matshri, Amit, Pratika, Judith, Gagan, Neha, Ashokji, Sanjay, and Siddharth. All of you have been a major support to all of us. My friends, we close a virtual Thinkathon now, this policy dialogue. My request to you would be just take care of yourself, be safe, stay healthy, follow all the precautions. Thank you very much. Namaskar.